Todd Young Online presents Young Tales. Tales for the young and the young at heart. Today's story:
Bulfinch's mythology, the Mabinogion, Geraint and Enid. In the golden days of Arthur's reign, when the court of Britain shone brightest at Caroline upon Usk, 9 kings sat at his table, and the songs of his bards were heard from sunrise to moonrise. There was no festival grander than that of Whitsuntide, when the rivers shimmered like silver and banners of every color waved from the towers. And upon one such morning, as Arthur sat at his feast beside Queen Guinevere, a forester came before him, a tall youth, his cloak still wet from the woods. The forester bowed. "Hail to thee, my lord Arthur. I bring tidings from the forest of Dean. I have seen a stag such as never before has been seen, a creature white as winter's snow, proud and alone, who will not herd with any other beast." Arthur rose. "A white stag, you say? Then tomorrow at daybreak we shall hunt him. Kill the rabbit, Anyway, let every horn be ready and every knight awake before the sun." And that night there was joy in the palace, songs and dancing, bright talk and feasting. When the dawn came, Arthur rose and armed himself, but Guinevere still slept beside him. "Let her rest," he said softly. "The morning hunt can wait for her dreams." Yet when she awoke and found him gone, she too called for her horse and rode into the greenwood, with but one maiden beside her. As they crossed the ford, they heard hooves behind them, and there rode a golden-haired knight, shining in the morning light. His cloak was of satin, his sword hilted in gold, and though he wore no armor, his bearing was noble and calm. Guinevere smiled. "Heaven prosper thee, Geraint. Why didst thou not ride with Arthur?" "I knew not where he went." "No, I knew not when he went, lady. But if it please thee, I will ride beside thee and watch the hunt from afar." And so they rode together until they came to the edge of the forest. But instead of the baying of hounds, they heard the sharp crack of a whip and the whinny of a horse. Down the path came a lady of surpassing beauty upon a white horse, followed by a knight in black armor and a dwarf who rode before them, proud and cruel-eyed. Guinevere sent her maiden to ask who they were, but when the maiden spoke, the dwarf struck her across the face with his whip, so that blood ran upon her cheek. Guinevere was furious. "Rude and shameful is that blow. Geraint, will you suffer such an insult?" Geraint's hand went to his sword, but he mastered his anger. "Lady, not now. I am unarmed, but by tomorrow I will know that knight's name and make right this wrong. Geraint followed the trio across the river through the hills until he came to a town bright with armor and banners. There he found an old ruined palace, and before its gate stood a gray-haired man and his daughter. Though their garments were poor, their grace was noble. The maiden's beauty struck him silent. The old man bowed. "Come in, chieftain, and you shall have the best that can be found for thee." They gave him bread and mead, and the maiden herself cared for his horse. From the old man he learned the town's purpose. A tournament was to be held that very day to win a sparrowhawk, the prize of beauty, claimed for 3 years by the same proud knight, the very man whose dwarf had struck the queen's maiden. "Then tomorrow," said Geraint, "I will challenge him and joust in the name of your daughter if you will grant her to me for my lady." "You're my lady." I'm sorry. "Gladly will I grant it," said the old man, "but the knight is strong and your armor is poor." "It will serve," said Geraint, "and if I live, your daughter shall have no cause to regret her champion." The next morning, the field shone with color, knights in polished steel, ladies in bright gowns, banners of every hue. At the center stood the Black Knight, proclaiming that his lady alone should take the Sparrowhawk. But Geraint rode forth in rusty armor and challenged him. 3 times their lances broke, and the crowd shouted for the Knight of the Sparrowhawk. Then the gray-haired man brought Geraint his last lance, the one he had carried when he was first made knight. The old man called, "Here, chieftain, this lance never failed me in my youth." With that weapon, Geraint charged once more. His blow shattered the Black Knight's shield and sent him tumbling over his horse's tail. They fought on foot, swords flashing till sparks flew between them, until Geraint struck the knight down and he yielded. "Mercy, chieftain," said the Black Knight breathlessly. "I yield. Only grant me time to seek pardon for my sins." "Thou shalt have mercy upon one condition," said Geraint. "Go to Queen Guinevere and there confess the insult done by the dwarf, and make atonement at Arthur's court." And so the defeated knight rode away, the lady he had claimed weeping beside him, the dwarf behind, all 3 bound for Caerleon. Caerleon? Caerleon. C-A-E-R-L. Caerleon. Okay. Sorry. When Geraint returned to the old palace, the gray-haired man greeted him with joy. "Behold," he said, "the maiden for whom thou didst fight, my daughter Enid. I bestow her upon thee." But Geraint answered, "She shall go with me to Arthur's court, and there the king and queen shall decree her fate." When they arrived, Arthur and Guinevere rejoiced to see them, and when Enid was arrayed in the queen's own garments, all declared her the fairest maiden in the island of Britain. Arthur himself joined their hands, and that night they were wed in gladness. Guinevere took Enid as her companion and said, "Rightly have I judged that the head of the white stag should go to thee, Enid, the noblest maiden in the land." And all the court applauded, for her beauty was matched only by her gentleness. Geraint served Arthur long and well, and his fame grew across the realm. But when messengers came from Cornwall bearing word that his aged father, Urban, was beset by restless lords, Arthur released him to return home, to guard his lands and boundaries. "Though it grieves me to lose thee," said Arthur, "cousin, it is my counsel that thou go and take thy lady with thee. Defend what is thine, and may heaven prosper thee." And so Geraint and Enid rode forth with a company of knights to Cornwall, where his people received them with joy. For many years they ruled in peace and splendor, until the songs of his valor were sung in every hall. But peace breeds weariness in the hearts of warriors. In time, Geraint laid aside his arms. He turned from the tourneys and the hunts, choosing instead to remain at Enid's side. So great was his love that he forgot all else, and men began to whisper that Geraint had lost his courage, that his manhood had melted away in idleness. When these rumors reached Enid's ears, she wept. One morning, as sunlight fell across their bed, she looked upon him sleeping and whispered, "Alas, am I the cause that these arms have lost their glory, that this heart has forgotten battle?" And as she wept, her tears fell upon his breast, and he woke up. Hearing her words, his heart turned bitter. He thought she spoke not out of sorrow, but scorn. "Rise, Enid," Geraint said coldly. "Dress thyself in thy poorest garments. Thou shalt ride before me this day, and we shall see whether my strength is gone. Speak not to me, not one word unless I speak first." Through wild forests they rode, Enid far ahead, silent and sorrowing. At noon they saw 4 horsemen riding from the trees, thieves and killers by their look. Enid heard them say, "Here is a lone knight, weary and lost. His horse and his lady will be ours." She trembled, torn between fear and obedience. At last she turned back and cried, "Lord, they seek thy life." Geraint was furious. "Did I not command thee silence? Be still and watch." Then he set his lance in rest and rode at the first robber, slaying him outright. The second, third, and fourth he slew in turn. When all lay still, he turned to her again. "Drive their horses before thee, Enid. Speak no word unless I command. and she obeyed, though her heart broke within her. Later they came to a lonely wood where night fell dark and heavy. Geraint slept in his armor while Enid kept watch. At dawn they rode again until they met a maiden weeping beside her slain husband. 3 giants, she said, killed him for sport and went that way. Without a word, Geraint spurred his horse after them. He met the giants and fought them alone. One he pierced with his lance, another he struck dead with his sword. But the third smote him with a great club, breaking his shield and shoulder. Yet even wounded, Geraint rose and split the giant's skull in twain. When he returned to Enid, his strength failed him, and he fell lifeless from his horse. Her cry was sharp and terrible. Ah! A passing earl, hearing her lament, took pity and bore them both to his hall. There he sought to comfort her, but his comfort turned to greed, for Enid's beauty stirred his lust. Be not so sorrowful, lady, the earl said smoothly. Thy husband is dead, but I will make thee a countess if thou wilt stay with me. While I live, I will never betray him, she said quietly. Not even death shall part us. And when she refused, the earl struck her across the face. Her cry rang through the hall, and at that sound, Geraint awoke. He rose from the bier, seized his sword, and cleaved the earl from crown to heart. Okay. Those who saw it fled, not from the living man, but from the risen one. And Geraint took Enid in his arms, mounted his horse, and rode away into the night. At last they were found by Geraint's ally, Wiffert Petit, who brought them to his castle. There physicians healed his wounds, and the armor of the hero shone once more. When Geraint was well, he turned to Enid and said, Lady, thou hast been faithful beyond measure. Forgive my harshness, for in thee I have found honor greater than my own. Enid wept, My lord, I have loved thee only, through silence, through sorrow, through all things. They returned at last to Cornwall, where they ruled long in peace and love, and the name of Enid was spoken forever as a symbol of patience, constancy, and truth. Thus ends the tale of Geraint and Enid, the faithful wife and the doubting knight, whose love was tried by pride and restored by pain. From the court of Arthur to the green hills of Cornwall, their story has been sung by bards through the ages. For it tells of what no sword nor glory can win, but only the steadfast heart of love itself. And here's where we end for today.
Young Tales is produced and narrated by Todd Young from Todd Young Online. If you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe and join us next time for another story. Thank you for your support.